Last night, I rehearsed what I'd say if someone called. They didn't. So I deleted the rehearsal, made coffee, and watched the sun climb the opposite building. There's a strange comfort in knowing no one expects you. You start to move differently, quietly, like a ghost still trying to remember what rooms it used to haunt. But this isn't just loneliness, it's architecture. Over years, the walls you build for protection start to look like home. And you forget that you ever lived without them, because isolation isn't just something that happens to you. It's something your brain learns, perfects, and eventually mistakes for safety. That's what this story is about. The invisible design of friendlessness, how it's wired into us, and how we can begin to unbuild it. You don't notice it at first, how the quiet rewires you. The brain of someone who's lived years without deep connection doesn't just feel different, it is different. Neural pathways begin to reshape themselves. Protective reflexes turn into habits. Habits harden into personality, and before you realize it, the defense becomes the design. What began as a response to pain becomes the architecture of who you are. You're not broken. You're adapted, and that adaptation, paradoxically, is both your survival mechanism and your cage. So let me ask you something. What if your isolation isn't a failure of character? What if it's a pattern etched deep into your nervous system, long before you ever had the words to name it? What if the very defenses that once protected you are now the walls that keep everyone out? This is where our descent begins, at the intersection of neuroscience and human longing, where friendlessness isn't just an absence, but an entire ecosystem. A landscape sculpted by time, by trauma, and by the brain's relentless drive to keep you safe, even if that safety has become its own kind of prison. Let's start with a truth psychology has known for decades, but that few of us ever apply to ourselves. The architecture of adult friendlessness is almost always built in childhood. It doesn't always begin with obvious trauma. Sometimes it's smaller, quieter. Maybe you were the kid who reached out first and learned too soon that reaching out could hurt. Maybe you were the one who trusted and the trust dissolved. Or maybe you were simply different, sensitive in a world that rewarded toughness, introspective in rooms that celebrated noise. The brain remembers these lessons, not as stories, as patterns. It starts predicting. Connection equals pain. And like any good prediction machine, it adjusts. It builds walls. It rewires the circuits that once reached outward, teaching them to hold back instead. This is where the neuroscience becomes haunting. Studies show that social rejection activates the anterior cingulate cortex, the same region that processes physical pain. To your brain, being excluded doesn't feel like a bruise. It is one. So you adapt. You learn not to touch the fire again. But here's the twist. The same walls that protect you from new burns also block out the warmth. They turn defense into design. By the time you reach adulthood, those neural defenses have become invisible architecture. They don't just shape how you act. They shape how you see. A delayed text feels like rejection. A distracted glance feels like proof of inadequacy. You're not imagining it. Your nervous system has been trained to detect threat in every silence. You think you're protecting yourself, and you are. But in protecting yourself, you start confirming the very pattern you're trying to escape. The paradox begins here. Your brain has learned the lesson too well. It isn't just avoiding danger anymore. It's expecting it. Neuroscientists call this rejection sensitivity, a state where the alarm system of the mind, the amygdala, fires too quickly, too often. A delayed text isn't just a delay, it's proof. A half smile that fades too soon becomes evidence. Ambiguity itself feels hostile, and so you brace for impact before there's even a threat. You enter every interaction wearing invisible armor, polite, composed, but distant. And people sense it. They feel the static before they understand the source. Psychologists call this the self-fulfilling prophecy. Expect rejection, act protected, and watch as protection creates the rejection you feared. It's not paranoia. It's pattern recognition gone feral. Your nervous system is trying to keep you safe. But safety has started to look a lot like solitude. Now add the quieter influence, the one you never chose. As a child, you watched how others related. The fights, the betrayals, the way affection could vanish overnight. Those observations became blueprints. They whispered, connection is unstable, love is conditional. And so, without realizing, you carried that architecture into adulthood. Every interaction runs through its corridors. You don't decide to keep people at arm's length. Your nervous system decides for you. The cruel truth is that the longer you live inside that design, the more natural it feels. You stop noticing the walls until someone tries to step inside. The result? You crave closeness, but your body treats it as danger. You want connection, but you flinch from it. You reach out, then pull back, and every repetition tightens the loop. The adaptation becomes the obstacle. It starts so small. Someone reaches out, a coworker, a classmate, an almost friend. For a moment there's a flicker, a pulse of maybe this time. And then the old machinery starts humming. The test, the scan, the silent interrogation. Are they safe? What do they want? When will they leave? You read between lines that were never written. You find the flaw before it finds you. And just like that, you step back. Psychologists call this preemptive rejection. Reject them before they can reject you. Leave before you're left. It feels like wisdom. It's really self-defense dressed as foresight. Then comes the story your mind tells to make it make sense. Someone cancels plans. They never really wanted to go. A text goes unanswered. I was too much, too soon. A compliment. They're just being polite. This is narrative distortion. Every kindness becomes coincidence. Every silence becomes proof. It's not self-pity. It's pattern maintenance. Because if you can predict rejection, at least you're in control. And then, the most deceptive move of all, you start confessing your damage before anyone asks. I'm bad at keeping in touch. I get awkward in groups. I tend to isolate. You call it honesty. But what you're really saying is, here's why you'll leave, so it hurts less when you do. It's protection that feels like transparency. But it frames you as the broken one before anyone's had a chance to decide otherwise. And when connection does appear, when someone offers real warmth, you raise the bar so high, it collapses under its own weight. You need perfection because you've been starving, and perfection doesn't exist. So you keep rehearsing the same outcome. Reach out, pull back, retreat. Each time, the pattern grows more elegant, more efficient. Your defenses become art forms, and art, even the tragic kind, always seeks completion. You're not avoiding love anymore. You're avoiding the grief of wanting it. When you've been alone long enough, something unexpected happens. The silence starts to teach. At first, It feels like erosion. Then slowly, it becomes vision. Without the noise of constant conversation, you begin to notice everything. The way people's faces change mid-sentence, the invisible hierarchies in a crowded room, the difference between real laughter and the kind that fills space. You start seeing life like a film you've watched too many times. You know every cut, every lie, every truth beneath the dialogue. This isn't cynicism. It's pattern recognition sharpened by distance. Neuroscience has a name for this: theory of mind, the ability to imagine what others feel. And oddly enough, isolation can amplify it. When you spend your days outside the circle, you spend your nights thinking about the circle. You become an anthropologist of your own species. But understanding is not the same as belonging. You can read the script perfectly and still never step on stage. That's the paradox. You see through connection, and seeing through it makes it harder to return. And so, you turn inward. Your mind becomes a theater. Conversations that never happened play on repeat. Friends who don't exist keep you company in imagined rooms. You become fluent in a language spoken only by you. It's not delusion. It's survival, because humans are storytellers, and when no one listens, the story still has to go somewhere. But here's the cost. The richer your inner world becomes, the poorer reality feels in comparison. Real people stumble. Real dialogue stutters. Real intimacy never follows the script. And so you drift deeper into the world behind your eyes, where everything is coherent, where loneliness has logic, and where no one can misunderstand you. You begin to crave a kind of connection that can't exist outside imagination. And that craving, unfulfilled, becomes its own form of devotion. Yet hidden inside this isolation is a strange gift. You've learned to observe without judging, to feel without fleeing, to hold contradictions without needing to fix them. You've become someone who understands the quiet parts of people, even if no one's there to witness how deeply you could understand. You've grown sophisticated in your solitude, and that sophistication is both your strength and your curse. There's a term in engineering called stress corrosion, metal that weakens not from use, but from non-use. The same thing happens to us. When connection stops, something subtle begins to rust. You walk into a room and your timing feels wrong. Your laugh arrives half a second late. You stand too close or too far. Your body remembers the choreography, but the rhythm of belonging has slipped away. This is social rust, and everyone can feel it, even if they can't name it. We're wired to sense when someone's signals are slightly off. A flicker of uncertainty that whispers different, so you overcorrect. You perform ease, rehearse small talk, mirror energy that isn't yours. But performance is friction, and people can feel that too. You're caught between two impossible choices. Be yourself and risk confirming your difference, or act normal and risk being seen as false. Then comes the harder part, the timeline. How do you explain years of silence without sounding like a confession? How do you tell a new friend there are no old ones to mention? Because in this culture, friendship is proof that you're safe, that someone already chose you. When you have no proof, people hesitate, not out of cruelty, but calibration. They're scanning for risk, and loneliness reads as risk. Meanwhile, the world keeps insisting connection is easy. Every article, every post, every glossy montage of friendship shouts the same thing: belong or be broken. And that message, meant to help, turns into another wall of shame. Because when isolation is called failure, every lonely night feels like evidence against you. You scroll. You see their gatherings, their laughter, their light. But what you don't see are the silences between their posts, their own private ache for meaning. Still, knowing that doesn't stop the sting. And even for those who want to reach out, the structure of modern life keeps pulling us apart. We move for work. We live in boxes stacked above strangers. The third places, the cafes, the parks, the chance meetings that used to build community, are vanishing. So you sit there again, realizing your solitude isn't just psychological. It's structural, it's cultural, it's systemic. A knot made of memory, neuroscience, and city planning. A loneliness too complex for any quick fix. But somewhere inside that realization is also a quiet relief. It wasn't only your fault. The world itself forgot how to stay close. And maybe knowing that is the first step toward forgiving yourself for not knowing how to start again. Here's a difficult truth. Your isolation hasn't just broken you. It's been teaching you. It's been showing you who you are when no one's watching. Who you are when there's no audience to applaud, no voice to mirror back approval. Most people never get that far. They stay busy enough to avoid ever meeting themselves. You didn't have that option, so you met yourself. And what you found, well, wasn't always pretty, but it was real. Depth psychology calls this the path of the authentic, the way that begins when the familiar life collapses. You didn't choose it. It chose you. You've been through a crucible. And crucibles don't just destroy, they refine. What burned away were illusions. The need to be liked, the scripts you used to perform. What survived is something rarer. A self that's honest, even when it's afraid. And here's the paradox. The very qualities your isolation forged, depth, patience, emotional precision, authenticity, are the same ones that make real connection possible. You're not too broken for friendship. You're too refined for shallow ones. That doesn't mean staying alone. It means seeking resonance instead of rescue. It means letting the person you became in solitude be the one who reaches out. Because the brain that learned isolation can also learn connection. Neuroplasticity runs both ways. Each small act of openness, each risk, each honest moment, rewires the pattern, one synapse at a time. You don't have to be fixed to be ready. You just have to be willing. So when the silence comes again, and it will, don't rush to fill it. Listen, that's the sound of the old circuitry loosening. That's the sound of space being made for something new. You are not the absence of friendship. You are the soil that friendship can grow in, dark, dense, alive with what you've learned. This isn't the end of loneliness. It's the beginning of integration. A life where solitude and connection don't cancel each other. They complete each other. So here we are, at the edge of the silence that started everything. If you've made it this far, you already know the truth most people never face. That understanding your isolation is the first step toward transcending it. Not escaping, not erasing, just transcending. Because you are not your isolation, even though it has shaped you. You are the awareness watching it, the consciousness that refused to disappear. Your loneliness has not been a void. It's been an incubation, an underground season where something small and patient was growing. Seeds don't bloom in sunlight first. They bloom in dark soil. And you have been underground a long time. But underground isn't death. It's preparation, the kind that takes longer, but lasts longer. Every quiet night you've endured, every morning you faced alone, wasn't evidence of failure. It was the slow forming of roots. And now, whether or not you can feel it yet, you are beginning to rise. The same brain that learned silence is learning sound again. The same heart that closed is remembering how to open. The same walls that protected you are softening. Brick by brick, thought by thought. You don't have to rush. Becoming doesn't happen all at once. It happens like dawn, one unnoticed shade at a time. So if you're sitting there now, in that same silence that has weight and texture, know this: you're not behind. You're not broken. You're not waiting for permission to begin. You already have. The silence is still here. But listen closer. Beneath it, something is moving. It's you, becoming.